Bonjour. One of the favorite books I've read is L'écume des jours by Boris Vian. It's translated as The Froth on the Daydream. And it's a book I read at school and I really liked. It's a lovely story, but it's written in a really weird way. And the reason why I really liked it also is because we studied it at school and my teacher explained it really well, and I could really understand what the writer wanted to say, and I really recommend if you can read it.
Hi guys, I'm here to talk to you about one of the first books I fully read. It's called La Venganza de Winnie Pooh. It talks about an Indian who has a terrible life, and in the end he succeeds because he's got a lot of determination. Okay, I read it twice. That's the first one. When I was 10 or 12, I read it twice. Oh my gosh. And the second book, it was about, I was about 16, 17, and it's called Edad Prohibida by Torquato Luca de Tena. And it's an amazing book because by then, you know, when you're a teenager, you have lots of doubts, lots of problems, lots of things that you have in your brain, you don't know exactly how to sort out. And that book really helped me in several situations. It gave me a different vision of kids, of the characters who are going through the same problems that I had by then, and I found the solution for that. So if you can read it, Edad Prohibida, Torquato Luca de Tena, a must. Enjoy them!
Okay, the story I'm going to talk about is the first book, or the first story that I had to read by myself in Spanish, and how hard I found it, and how it was really, really difficult, and I had to look up every single word, and I didn't have a kind of librarian who spoke Spanish who could help me pick books, and the Spanish teacher wasn't a Spanish person, and so I was pretty much all by myself with this story. And it was about an axolotl, and look, axolotls are really weird, look. And it was about a man who loves axolotls so much that he became one. And I thought that I must have misunderstood it when I read the end, and I thought that because it was so weird that maybe I just didn't know any Spanish and I was rubbish at it. And then when I went to the lesson and I said, this is what I think it's about, and the teacher said, that's right, I was really pleased with myself because I'd understood it. And even though I'd had to work really, really hard to understand it, I was really pleased, and I was pleased that I hadn't given up. And I think that applies the same to you. So you guys, when you read in English, and you maybe don't understand it at first, you just got to keep going, and you will improve and you'll get better. And you're really lucky, and you were luckier than I was, because you've got a brilliant librarian who will help you, and who've got loads and loads of brilliant books for you to read and to help you with your English, so that, not like me, when the first time I had to read a story all by myself in Spanish, it was the first time I'd ever done it, and that was when I was doing my A-levels, right? Whereas you guys, you're going to be really, really confident readers by the time you get to A-levels, so keep it up.
A book that's been really important and a big influence on my life is The Diary of Anne Frank. Basically, I assume you all know the story, but for me it was important because it's a girl who was full of like the joy for living, intelligent, wrote extremely well, and her life was cut short. You know, she went into hiding when the Nazis then discovered her. And so for me, you know, it's important because first of all, it's really interesting to read, and I always still enjoy reading it. But you know, it shows that for me, the important part is that, you know, life sometimes isn't all how we expect it to go, and so it's about making the most from life. And you know, I think it has the echoes of that book, you know, especially at the moment with what's happening in the US and, you know, parts of Britain. I think it, you know, and you know, other countries in Europe, it talks a lot about, you know, what we should be thinking about and you know, trying to prevent.
I quite like reading autobiographies because, you know, you only see these people in the media like Alex Ferguson or Roger Federer rattling it down. You see them in the media and they're very successful people. But what you actually don't see is the background of where they've come from. And it's good to see sometimes that normal people with normal backgrounds can actually make it big in life. So as a reader, it's a big motivation for me to be reading these autobiographies.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, the book I want to talk about is Prester John by John Buchan. It's a fairly old book, but it's the first book I really read. I read it because when I was about 12 or 13, I thought I didn't like reading. and my parents, to try and get me to read, made a bet with me that I couldn't read a whole book in 1 week. So I took on that bet, convinced that I would win the bet and get some money from my mum and dad. Turned out I loved the book so much I finished it in just over 2 days and read another 2 books that week, and I've not stopped reading ever since, and I can't imagine not reading books every day now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Right, hi. Let me tell you the story of my book. This is my friend Claude Robillard. He's from Canada. When we first met, he didn't speak any Spanish, and I couldn't quite speak English. So we used to meet for coffee, and he told me, if you really want to learn English, what you should do is read this book. And he gave me a book and gave me 2 rules. I could not use a dictionary, and I couldn't give up before page 30. And I did want to give up about 20 times before I got to page 30. But after page 30, I couldn't stop reading this book, Dune, by Frank Herbert. It has everything. Adventures, a planet full of sand, which is like a desert, intrigue, warriors, so it's a little bit of everything. After finishing it, I went on to read the whole series. It's about 14 books in about a month. My summer holidays I spent reading. I couldn't stop reading. Over 3,000 pages in English, from pretty much no reading in English at all. So this really got me engaged into learning English, and here I am now, teaching in English. So, good Dune.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you about 2 books. First of all, I'll talk about this one. This is a biography about a guy called Matthew Pinson. And it means a lot to me because when I was at university, my biggest passion was rowing, and it was a new sport to me initially. And then I was kind of a bit addicted to it, and I loved it. It was a big part of my life. And at the time, this guy was probably the best rower in the world, or certainly one of the best. It was a real inspiration to me. And it means even more because my gran, or my late gran, she actually queued up in Norwich for hours and hours and hours to get it signed, and it says, David, good luck at Loughborough from Matthew Pinson. And it probably helped me get to a higher level, and certainly in my last 2 years I got to a good level of rowing, a good national level, and it was an inspiration to me, and I probably read it about 5 times and I could read it again. That's my first book. And my second book is for nostalgia really. It's called Falling In Again, Tales of an Incorrigible Angler. And I think incorrigible means someone who can't be changed or can't be reformed. And it's about a guy, a very famous fisherman. He used to hold the record for carp, the biggest carp in the world actually at the time. And he, well, it's like my growing up in Norfolk. It was a very childhood in the countryside, I suppose. There's lots of fishing and cycling and building things in dens and things like that. My brother bought me this book, and I've again read it maybe 5 or 6 times, and I think the guy is like a poet, and every short story in this book brings back all sorts of memories, and it's just the way everything is written, it just reminds me of my childhood. So that means a lot to me, and because it's a gift from my brother and we still have a yearly fishing trip, that's even better. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Well, I've read loads of books in my lifetime, and of course some stand out for many reasons, but I do remember one, and I actually don't even remember the title of it. It was from a book of Grimm's fairy tales, and it was about a little family of pixies, and they all lived in a little village, and there was one little pixie, and she was lazy, and her house was always messy. And of course, growing up with three young sons, I often identified with her later. And one Saturday, the rest of the village decided they were going to get together and they were going to make her clean her house. And they came round as a big deputation, and they came in with all their buckets and everything. And her little pixie cottage, a bit like a cave house in Spain, was actually, she scrubbed, she cleaned, she had to wash, she had to tidy, she had to paint, she worked harder than she ever did in her life. And at the end of it, everybody went away feeling great, and she fell exhausted into a sofa chair, and her house was just sparkling. And I just loved the fact that this little house had been transformed. And she decided she would never ever let her house get so dirty. And of course, every month or so, when I really aim to do a big clean, I actually think of that wee pixie, and I think of the energy she put in, and I smile because we all have great ideas and we don't always stick to them. But the exhaustion that she felt at the end of that day, I think I've felt that often cleaning my house. So I do know what she's felt like, and I can share that with her. And I still think of her quite often. So hopefully your books will actually mean as much as that little pixie did to me when I was probably only 6 or 7.
Hey guys, so my favourite book when I was a child was 1984. It made me think a lot about what's out there. So the book was written in 60 years before 1984 and it was given an idea of what the world will be like. And it just made me think technology is advancing and everything, and do you actually know what's going on in the world? And it's a great read. I was constantly reading it during GCSE and afterwards, and it just made me think bigger and better about things. That's why you guys should read it.